And we are starting. So y'all can all see the webinar 3. We were talking about COGS. I'm trying to talk on a upper level, but I don't want to like talk over anybody. So I'm going to try to do my best to break it down in a more simple way and then kind of dive into it like a lot more intricate. So first thing I'm going to say is who in here actually knows what COGS stand for? You do? Okay. Shelly, what is it?
Cost of goods sold.
Whoop. Okay, now in the residential cleaning industry, what that means, there's a lot of questions around what that means. And it means basically that I'm going to go ahead and go to my next slide. The definition of COGS are a direct cost associated with delivering your cleaning service. You are not going to be able to get out of these costs. Like there is no way that you can complete a cleaning without having to pay these expenses. No matter your, no matter what, you go send somebody out to do a one-time cleaning, bi-weekly, weekly cleaning. These are costs that are going to go directly with it. And you're not going to be able to get out of it because you absolutely have to pay these costs to get the job done. So key point is if the job wouldn't get done without it, if the job couldn't get done without it, then it's a cost that you incur per cleaning and it does belong to COGS. So we went over this in our webinar on Tuesday or Wednesday, and a lot of people will measure COGS differently. And it's okay if you do. It depends how you want to. But at minimum, your cost of goods sold should include payroll cleaners, payroll taxes cleaners. So it might require you breaking that down. Like you don't want your management payroll cost up in or payroll taxes up in your COG because your management staff is not considered part of your COGS. That's considered your management cost, which is other cost. So making sure that you get your payroll cleaners and your payroll cleaners taxes separate. And then of course, if your mileage. I included mileage because I know some of you guys are CBF and you don't technically pay for mileage, but you technically do because you're overpaying per job to account for the mileage. So even though you might not have it listed out as separately, know that it's in there. Because if you send people, if you're paying 10% over on every job and you're saying, hey, that's your mileage, then it is actually included in the COG. 4, 5, and 6 is residential cleaning supplies. That's any supply that is going to that the cleaners have to get that job done. That includes vacuums, everything. If you want to get really granular on that, you can even categorize your cleaning supplies broken down even more specifically. This is chemicals, this is vacuums, these are brushes. Like if there's something wrong with your supply cost and it's too high, then that's when you take, okay, it's at a reasonable thing, I'm going to leave it alone. But if it's too high, then you get really granular and you start measuring those differently into very, very specific things. So I know like with Maids and Moore, we pulled out our vacuums as a separate line item because I was like, I can't look at it like the vacuums are such a high cost item and that it was very useful to look at it separately. And I'll show y'all that here in a minute. The next thing is credit card processing is considered. Just consider credit card processing. You've got to be able to pay, you got to be able to collect the money for that job, whether that's in a credit card processing fee or you paying a manager to run around and collect checks or running around yourself and collecting it from different avenues. It costs you, whether it's a credit card processing fee or whether it's a collections person, you have to collect the money. So what is that cost to you? And then one that a lot of people don't include that I feel should be included, but you don't have to. So if you're not, it's okay. But breakages, when you increase the number of cleanings that you're cleaning per day, obviously you're going to go break more stuff because you're in more houses. So that should be considered part of your cost of goods sold. And it's actually a really, really important thing to measure. And especially if your operations people are bonused or rewarded for keeping the COGS low, you would definitely want that breakage to be in there because they would want to get their breakage lowered. Like it's not just, oh, it just happens. Like it needs to be in the COG. Same thing with Dan Plata even said that the other day that he likes to put workman's comp in there because he wants to incentivize his operations team to keep that workman comp number as low as possible with as little accidents or injuries as possible. So Choose what you want, 1 through 7, but just pick it and then start being consistently measuring it. So step one, how do I track my COGS? How many of you like know exactly what your COGS are right now off the top of your head? Got the raise in the hands? All right. So if you don't, you're going to step one. Step one is let's track those suckers. Like you don't like numbers, you hate numbers, but it is the most important part of owning a cleaning services is knowing what your COGS are. So if you're going to do it yourself, like say you really like numbers and it's really easy for you to track and you're doing your own QuickBooks file or you're doing it, DIY through an Excel sheet, either way, you need to be measuring all your transactions that you're spending every month and categorizing those and getting your COGS broke down. And when a COG percentage of over percentage of your revenue. So we want to see how much do we spend in COGS, how much money did we get in revenue, and what is that percentage and what should it look like? So if I go back to get rid of that little pencil, move it. So if I go back to the slide before, oh my gosh. Hold on, there's like a little thing stuck in my way. 1 second. Okay, if I go back to this slide right here, it's going to show you that that should be 40 to 50% if you're just measuring those three. And here, if you're including your residential cleaning supplies in your credit card processing, your breakage, our goal needs to be between 50 and 55. If you're including your workman's comp, then maybe between 50 and 57. Obviously, you can get lower than that. That's even better. And if you can get lower than that, then I want to have a talk with you because I want to know how you did it. And I want to be that low as well. So moving on to the next slide. So you can either do this yourself, start tracking it in QuickBooks, categorizing it under COGS, and then in your COGS, you need to be breaking down each of those COGS, which I'm going to get to on the next slide. And then if you don't know how to even go about this, I promise you, you will waste more of your time. And if you're not good at something, spend time doing something you're good at. So if you don't know numbers and none of this is Greek and you have no idea what you're doing, you need to hire a professional. Dan was on our podcast. I highly recommend Best Damn Bookkeeping. There are other bookkeeping services out there. Just be careful. The great thing about Dan is that he works with cleaning service and service industry people. So when he goes to code your stuff, he understands what you're trying to do rather than having to retrain like somebody completely random that may not be in the service industry. So get with a professional, start tracking. The bottom line is whether it's done in-house or outsourced, you have to know your numbers. And the COG, there's a lot of other numbers that we're not talking about today. We are solely focused on COGS. So I will kind of get to at the end of that. So here is how I break down COGS. So we have the payroll cleaners, payroll mileage, payroll tax cleaners, vacuums, cleaning supplies, breakages, credit cards. So when I'm logging these in QuickBooks, I'm actually putting them under that category so I can just run a quick report and boom, I've got my numbers for the whole month. When you look at those numbers, this is an example. I even have 2 locations set up here, like a bigger location and then a smaller location. Like you can see at top, that's $636,000 a month for the bigger location, and then the smaller location is pulling in $880,000 a month. So these are examples of healthy COGS. So I'm breaking down and measuring them by percentage of each section of it. So notice up here at top, I'm going to start with revenue. Make sure that when you are talking about your revenue, this number does not include tips and it does not include sales tax because that's not true revenue. Those are pass-through numbers, like you're collecting the tip, passing it through the customer, or you're collecting the tips or you're collecting sales tax and passing it on to, whatever state you're paying. So let's subtract those 2 numbers before we actually put this number up here. Or you can do it as a line item a different way if you have a different way of doing it, but I just want to make sure that y'all knew that you be careful with tips and sales tax because it's truly not revenue. It's a pass through. It is not considered a revenue number. So payroll cleaners, this is how much did I pay out to cleaners to clean this month? And then I broke it down in percentage. And same thing with the smaller company. I have 60,000. I broke it down. If you notice here, I was like, wow, why is one location less than the other? Why am I paying out more in one location? This is the same company, it's just a different location. When I dove into it, I figured out that in this location, I have way more tenured cleaners who are getting paid way higher rates because they've been there much longer. And then we have a lot more new hires in the other location. So turning your staff over sucks, but at the same time, it kind of turns out to be a little bit profitable for you in the long run because you're able to start those new people out at a little lower rate. So that's something to think about. But obviously, I love my tenured people, so we'll just take a little bit higher rate on payroll. Mileage, if you do pay mileage, these two particular locations paid mileage. Maybe yours, like Faith with CBF, yours would be zero because it's kind of up in your payroll cleaners because y'all don't specifically pay that. But I looked at the difference. I think mileage at 3% is pretty reasonable, so it feels good for me. And then I got out the payroll taxes. You're not going to get away from payroll taxes, and that is about right, about the amount of taxes that you're going to have to pay out to them, pay out for payroll taxes. Then I told y'all I actually put out my vacuums separate because vacuums, they're expensive. They can take a lot of those costs and they can take a lot of those. I needed to look at them separately because I'm like, do we need to switch vacuums? Do we need to think a whole different vacuum approach? But if I'm not measuring that month to month separately to be able to figure out how much are my vacuum costs, then I can't really know if it's a problem. Like when I first started breaking these down, my vacuum costs were more than half, way more than what they should be. So maybe looking at them different. Cleaning supplies, I look at that and separated out basically everything that we use that we buy every month. I will tell you guys something, a trick with supplies when we get to that point. I'm actually going to teach you tricks on how to lower each and individually every single one of these. So breakages is also in there. That's pretty good percentage. So this and credit card processing is always going to run you somewhere between 2.5 to 3.0. So I'm right in line with that. So in this location, I have an overall COG of 52.95. That's a healthy business. This one, I love in it because this company is going to profit a lot more, or this, because I mean, even though they're smaller, but their percentage of profit is going to be higher because that COG is lower. So it's really important. Imagine what I could do if I could lower that number right there for Austin or for this location. If I could lower that 1%, who has their calculator out and their volume on? What is one, if I could get this down to 51.95, what is 1%? Well, I kind of know that. 1% of $636,151. $6,300 to my bottom line that month to profit if I can just make that number budge 1%. So, like Todd said on our podcast, little bitty increment changes make a lot of difference. So, if you can work on them and get these numbers and percentages as low as you possibly can, the more money you're going to make. So, this is an example of an unhealthy cog. So, if you can look here, you can see that Austin, these are made up numbers, by the way, that this bigger location is like at 65% variable costs. That's on previous to the other slide, 52. That's like almost a 12% difference. Faith, what is 12% of that revenue?
At the 636,
Yeah.
12% would be 76,000.
$76,000 I just wasted this month by having too high of a cost in COGS. So I mean, this is on a big scale, but you can see the difference that this percentage is going to be your biggest profit mover in the residential cleaning industry is your COG. If you can get your COGS low, then you are talking way more profit. So obviously, what I would do right now is I'd start freaking out because I'd be like, this COG is way too high. We got to get these down. We don't have if it takes me 64% if 64% of $1 has to go towards just the cleaning, that only leaves me $36 to go and pay the rest of my expenses. And I can guarantee you by the time I get done paying management costs and paying all of the other fixed costs and rent and stuff like that, I'm not going to have any profit left over at the end of the day. So the best way to get your business more profitable is in this COG number. And so now I am going to break it down. So step 3, COG breakdown fixing. It's probably going to be one of the hardest and most painful ones that you're ever going to do, but you have to conquer it or you're just working for free and you're not making any money. So first of all, if you don't know them, start tracking it ASAP. Second of all, if you got above, 55% in those, we need to get those lowered. And we need to get you making more money because what is the point? None of us want to work for free and we work way too hard and we deserve to be paid what we should be paid. So the first thing is fixing payroll cleaners. So in this show right here, this is this number, payroll cleaners, this first line item. How in the world do you do that? So this is a big long discussion, right? So it depends on how you're paying. Like Dan had said in one of our in our podcasts that like a lot of times it's a mix match of pay. Like you're charging a certain way and then you're paying hourly and it's not matching up. Like $100 of this cleaning and you're paying out $20 an hour, but maybe they're there 8 hours, but you only charged for 4. There went all the payroll out. So there's different type of payroll structures. If you're gonna do hourly, you better make sure that you're pricing your jobs on a truly hourly. Like if she's a $20 an hour employee, that you're marking that up to at least 45 or 50 an hour so that and the time is actually accurate so that you are actually having that linear payout with what you're charging. ATH is an awesome way that what that stands for is job ticket hour. And that means like you book a weekly cleaning, it's a 2-hour weekly cleaning, and you're going to pay that cleaner 2 hours no matter what at her JTH rate, which, could be 20 an hour. So that your job cost is going to be $40 for that job. So therefore you should probably have priced that job at least, double that or a little bit more. So you're talking 80 to 100, somewhere in that price range is what you should be doing. What's cool about JTH is if you increase the customer's price, but you don't increase the job ticket hours, meaning like I'm going to keep this as a 2-hour job. She's still going to get paid $40 for it, but I'm going to go up on my prices 10% for the customer. You don't have, you can, but you don't have to pay your cleaner more. She is still set at her job ticket hour time. Commission, a lot of times commission is directly related to the cost of the cleaning. So we do pay commission. And so like if it's $100 job, the cleaner is going to get paid 40% of that job. So she's going to get paid $40. If I raise that customer's price to 120, guess what? The cleaner's commission just went up as well because she gets paid 40% of 120. It's a perfectly good structure because it's all like it's linear. Like you are able to predict exactly what you're paying out on every job. So you're going to know what your COGS are because you know they're going to be 40%. There are tricks around commission pay, which I will get to here in a second, where you could add in some admin fees, pay your cleaners that take some administrative admin fees off the top before you pay them their percentage off of the price, and then a lot of different other tricks. So, and then we just already kind of talked about hourly, and then I talked about, doing the admin fees with commissions so you can get that admin fee out before you're paying them commissions. So, price increases without increasing pay is something you need to think about. So if you have a COG problem, which I'm not gonna lie, sounds like I think I went to COG rehab for like 7 years. I was stuck there like, why can't I get these COGS down? Why can't I get the COGS down? And it is a really hard thing to fix, and you're gonna have to make some tough choices on how to fix it. Like you're gonna have to restructure your pay. Maybe you're gonna need to switch from hourly to JTH. Maybe you're gonna need to switch from commission to JTH, or maybe the answer isn't how you're paying your customers. Maybe it's that you're not how you're paying your employees, but how much you're charging your customers. And maybe you need to do a giant price increase so you can get those COGS at the right percentage. So it's not the funnest thing to fix COGS, but it's worth it because if you're not making any money, then what does it matter anyway? So I'm usually not a very salesy person when it comes to the cleaning software, and certainly any CRM is very, very important that the payroll structure is there. Like what TCS can calculate all this for you. We can even advise you in the way in which to pay after we look at your company. We work with you hand in hand to make sure that your pay structures are set up correctly with the amount that you're charging your customers. And so it's very important that you have a CRM that is able to do this. Also, having a CRM that is able to make a switch, like, oh man, I really don't want to pay commission anymore. I really want to switch to JTH. That could be overwhelming and very hard for you to do. And while you're spending all this time in the office trying to switch this whole procedure, and you probably have all these manual tasks over here, your CRM should be able to automate it and let you switch over easily. I think there's even some of you in this webinar who have done the switch and it's been pretty easy when you're using the cleaning software. So know that you're going to have to go through, if you've got a bad COG problem and you had to go to rehab like me, that it's going to be okay. You can get out of it. And I would also, after we open Q&A, we can talk about some more particular situations. Another thing that really affects maid payroll or cleaners payroll is your training program. While I was in rehab trying to fix my COGS, I figured out that we were randomly just doing training programs, keeping people in the training too long. And that's, I'm set up to pay that cleaner 40%. Well, those cleaners are still getting paid 40%, but now I have an additional cost for training on top of that. So I think what happened for us is that we got so in growth mode that we just were like, hire everybody, train everybody, we need more people. And then I was like, oh, I realized that was what was kind of happening to our COGS. We had too many trainers. Well, the answer is not to stop training to fix your COG. Don't ever do that because then you're going to be in a revenue boat of a storm. But what we did is we found out what is that sweet spot. Like in one of our locations, the sweet spot is to have 5 trainers going at all times, 100% of the time. And that way we've made that trainer cost predictable over, and we were measuring our COGS and we figured out that was the perfect number. So if we have 5 trainees going in 1 week and they all and then we only keep them in there for a week and then we turn them on to revenue producing cleaners 1 week. If you keep them in there for 3 weeks, they're not revenue producing cleaners and you're just wasting money in training program and payroll you'll never get back because they're not creating revenue. You need to get the trainees creating revenue ASAP to offset your COGS. So we reduced our training time from like 2 weeks to 5 days. If they're not going to make it in 5 days, start over. Get another one. At that week, we would have 5 trainees going, and let's say, let's be realistic. Let's say 2 of them make it. And they go over to being a regular employed maid, and they go on commission or JTH. Now, I got to start over with 5 more that week. Like, I got to keep it going. Keep it going. Keep that constant turning. Now, you may find that that's a little aggressive. Like Austin is a really aggressive growth place. So maybe yours looks like 1 trainer at all times going, or 2 trainers at all times going. It's one, and keep it to 2 a week and keep a set number of trainers going because now you've just stabilized your training cost and you're able to predict and make your COGS predictable for the future. So also look at the way you're paying your trainers. Maybe you can be just a couple little wiggle room. Let's say, you started out trainers at $20 an hour. Like maybe just since it is only a week, convincing them to go down to $15 an hour as soon as you're out of 1 week, you go up, but think about $5 an hour for that trainee to just try it out for a week is costing you less money, and they're going to stay if they like it or not. They're not going to leave because of the trainee or training pay. But if you're having trouble getting people to even try it, then obviously you're going to have to go up. But finding that very minimal you can pay a trainee and still get them to sign up and go is also really important. Reduce your duration, streamline the training steps. So you're like day 1 trainee, day 2 trainee, day 3 trainee, day 4, day 5. And no matter what trainer is training them that day, they know that, hey, this is a day 2 trainee. So they know what they're working on day 2. And I think we're going to talk about that next Wednesday. Like day 1 trainee does bathrooms. Day 2 trainee does kitchens and bath, or, whatever. They're switching their areas. And also you have 4 or 5 different trainers, but maybe you want to keep them with the same trainer. But I think it's really important that if you do switch their trainer that week, make sure you're giving them a full gamut of all types of cleanings. You don't want to send a trainee out with one person who's doing weeklies all week. Like you want to make sure that that trainee is getting exposed to deep cleans, make readies, vacation rentals, what all the types of cleaning you do. So maybe you take a day 3 trainee, which all your trainers know what happens on day 3 for a trainer, but you give it to a different trainer because she's got some good jobs. She's got like a vacation rental and a deep clean, and we might really want that person to learn those things. So that is the training is very important. It can eat up some COGS super duper fast. And last thing about payroll cleaners. So we are only diving into that one little section of how to reduce your payroll for cleaners. And then the last thing is balance your team mix. If you're a solo, that's completely fine. But if you're a team, this is what we notice if you work in teams or twos or threes. If you have a ton of tenured people working together that say you're at 20% commission or 25% commission and you sticker with another tenured person that's 25% commission, obviously your COGS are going to be higher. Try to mix match your higher paid people with your lower paid people per job to kind of level out those COGS because you're giving up a whole lot of money with 2 really high paid people in one job. So before I go on, I'm just gonna backtrack because I feel like I just yap. We were on here talking about payroll cleaners. So I'm trying to dive into each of these sections and teach you strategies and how to lower each one of these sections. So we just went over payroll cleaners. You might have to adjust your pay structure. You might have to adjust what you're charging the customer. You might need to adjust how many trainees in your trainee program and see if you're spending too much money in that. And then balancing your teams out so that you don't have too high of paid people working on the same job together. I know that's a tough one, but that's kind of like third level tier when you've tried the other two and it's still not bringing down your COGS. Next, we're on to mileage. How do you decrease mileage? So mileage is having an effective route with less miles and drive time. If you do not pay mileage, which I do, but if you don't, it doesn't matter if their houses are halfway across town. Yes, it does because they're driving and the time that they're spent driving, they're not producing revenue for you. So you could have made more money from that cleaner if she had 3 small houses really tiny together versus having two small houses all the way across town and she's only able to do 2. So having an effective route is very, very essential. I almost put it over all of the rest. Having the routes efficient is very important. And then I don't usually toot the TCS's horn this much, but the cleaning software, we do our scheduling based off of a map where you can, like, a lot of times when people will come out of a different system and into TCS, they're like, oh my gosh, I was sending her from like one end of the town to the other and then back to the other side. And that is costing you money because it's costing you revenue generating time for that cleaner. So even if it's not specific to mileage reimbursement, it's still important. And then consider a sliding mileage reimbursement scale. So those of you who do actually pay mileage, price of gas goes up, price of gas goes down. I know whenever the price of gas would go up, my cleaners would start freaking out saying, they need more money for mileage. And I would go, okay, but if I increase it when it goes down, I'm also gonna go down. So we have a floating chart, and I can put that in the comments too as well, like the floating chart where we check like the state of Texas's average gas price. And according to that is what we set the mileage reimbursement rate for that week. So every week we are reimbursing a different rate depending upon gas prices, which the girls love. It's fair to them. And then I also get to when gas is cheap, if that ever happens again, I'm able to save money on my side. And then also mileage. If you are paying mileage and you're on solos, you're paying out less in solos a lot of times, so it kind of averages out. But if you've got 2 girls working together all day or a husband and wife doing the same jobs all day, put them in one car and one team because now you're paying one set of mileages and not 2 sets of mileages. I've seen people come from across town, like team 1 needs help with team 2, and then we send team 3. We got 3 cars driving to one job. So try to figure out in advance if you need to make a team instead of a solo for that day, just to save on 1, travel time, 2, mileage, etc. So moving on, we've got to payroll cleaners. We talked about mileage. Now we're going to talk about payroll tax cleaners. Like, How do I do that? The government's going to take whatever money they want. Then it's nothing I can do about it. There is actually some really small, minor things you can do about it. For example, reimbursements are not considered pay. Therefore, you're not paying any federal income tax or any payroll taxes on them. So when I pay, the reason I pay mileage instead of overpay per job or just pay them $5 extra per job is I'm able to take that and log in their payroll that that's reimbursement for mileage. I am not paying payroll taxes on that, and neither are they. So it's going to save you money in payroll taxes if you do it as reimbursements. I've seen a lot of people who just say, "Oh, I just pay them $50 at the end of every week extra for gas," and I'm like, you're paying payroll taxes on that $50 and they're paying payroll taxes on that $50. If when you make the stipend adjustment, make sure when you're putting it in your payroll, you're putting it in as a reimbursement and not as gross pay. Same thing with laundry. Like if you're saying they're washing their own rags and you're going to pay them $20 a day to do their own rags. I'm just making stuff up. Make sure you put that as a reimbursement and not as gross pay because that's not really pay and you're going to increase your payroll taxes. And then last but not least, another very easy way to reduce your payroll taxes is unemployment. You have to make sure that you keep your unemployment rate as low as possible. What does that mean? You can't just fire people without writing them up with no documentation because you're going to have to dispute that with your state for me, it's the Texas Workforce Commission. If you lose one of those, especially over like if you look at my payroll, 1% because I've lost 3 unemployment claims could cost me $12,000 a year. I mean, it's a huge thing. So making sure that you're documenting and keeping those unemployment tax rates low so that you do not have to pay excessive taxes. All right, next one. So we've gone through all of these. I lumped vacuums and cleaning supplies together. So we're on cleaning supplies and vacuums. Got a lot of tricks for this one. A lot of times what I see when I look at people's COGS is oh, well, my COGS are really high this month because I spent like $6,000 on supplies. But next month it'll be better because I'm spending, I only should have to buy like 200. If we want reliable monthly income and predictable financial futures, we need to make sure that we manage the inventory. So I'm on number 2. I skipped. Obviously, the best way is to get cheaper supplies, right? And make them more efficient. We're all pretty good shoppers. Get the cheapest stuff you can that lasts the longest. Get the best options as far as price wise. Always be reinvestigating that. This is the regular cheaper prices. This is my favorite thing about going on cleaning service. Like if I'm in a town and I stop at a cleaning service, I just want to visit with them. Like that's been the most beneficial thing is to go look at their supplies and what they're doing, and you can save a lot of money by that. So obviously the shopping, but what I was getting back to is managing your inventory. You don't want to have these giant spikes in supply costs. Think about it like your pantry at home. You don't want to get all the way down to zero and your kids are starving and then you've got to go to Costco and buy $5,000 worth of stuff to fill your pantry back up. Because look, now you're broke. You're broke that month. So what you do is you go to Costco once a month and you spend a set budget and keep that inventory of your pantry exactly the way it is. If you're not getting that set budget, now you may start to grow and have to increase that set budget by a little bit. But at the first of every month, you take a look at your shelves and you're not out of things, but you need to restock them and replenish them. Like say if you keep 30 Dawns on hand at all times, it's the beginning of the month and it's inventory time and you've got 17 Dawns. Well, then you need to go buy 13 because you need to replenish it to its 20. If we're replenishing and we're having a set amount and you're keeping those supplies like consistent, then you're never going to have these giant spikes. Another thing is managing your supply waste. If you have a system in place where cleaners can just come in and grab and go and get whatever they want, whenever they want it, and how much ever they want, you're probably going to have a little bit of a high supply cost. Like you have got to be able to monitor that. We did have a supply issue. We do not anymore. I mean, I think our supply cost is like less than 1%. And the way we were able to do that was the first two. Also, the third way we were able to do it is we have a supply bar and there's a supply manager and she is actually checking out supplies, checking off and seeing who is getting what. Like, okay, Faith picked up 30 bottles of Dawn this month. What is she doing with all these Dawns? Like you've got to be able to track it. Another thing, another way that we were able to make it is like, okay, you need a new bottle of Dawn. Bring me in your empty bottle of Dawn. And you have to exchange the empty for the new. I mean, there are some, refillable stuff that's obviously they bring in their empty bottle and refill it. Or my sponge is gross. I need a new sponge. Give me the gross sponge. Let me see it. Throw it away. I know that sounds crazy, but knowing that they're going to be held accountable to not just grab supplies whenever they please, or you're definitely there for them. If they need a new sponge, I'm in it because I don't want quality complaints. I don't want to punish them for having a nasty sponge. I just want them to bring it in and turn it in and get a new one. And it also holds them accountable for loss of items. They're like, oh, I need a new sponge. I left it at so and so's house. If you're going to start, if they don't have the sponge to turn in, you're going to start to see the people who are losing stuff. And then they know that they're going to get called out for it. And just even holding them accountable is gonna fix your problem by 90%. Now, if you've got the person that's constantly losing stuff, you might have to get a little bit more creative and be like, you have lost 3 mop sticks this month. I'm going to have to make you pay for the next one, or you're gonna have to buy your own. So last one on this one is maybe instead of finding a low cost vacuum, finding a vacuum that's maybe an all-in-one instead of having to carry 2 vacuums. And then also it is cheaper to repair them than to clean them. So, I mean, to buy a new one. So if you've got repairable vacuums, like try to repair them before just replacing. I have like a graveyard vacuum, and sometimes one's broke, but the switch on this one is good, and the head is good on this one. So we'll keep the working parts over here, and then somebody will come in with a broken vacuum, and we'll have a piece to be able to replace it to keep going, and that's helped a lot. So that is we are getting from we just went through cleaning supplies. Our next is how am I going to get those costs down? Breakages, we all know that one. I don't feel like I have to state the obvious. Like, if you're breaking a bunch of stuff, like, I'm constantly breaking candelabras. Well, let's have a training on how to not break a candelabra. Also is like tracking. Are you tracking every time they have a breakage and running a breakage report? Like in TCS, we have the interaction log every time they have a breakage, because then you can run a breakage report at the end of the month and look and say, this cleaner has had 5 breakage instances. Either she needs a write-up, a retraining, something like that. So having a tracking system that's actually tracking even the smallest of breakages, because that usually means they're going too fast or they need more training. And then obviously if you're like bleach was one that we got absolutely 100% rid of because it was causing all kinds of damages. So we're like, whoop, that's gone. Or that one scrubber, she gone. She has scratched 3 stovetops. We're gonna find a new scrubber. And then establish clear policies to and uphold them, like for your customers. Like one of the biggest ones that we've caused the biggest amount of breakages is they want us to use their supplies. Well, maybe their vacuum is like janky and has a rock under in the roller blade, and I just vacuumed their entire wood floor and scratched it all up, So know that if they're not using we have a set customer policies and procedures that say we are trained on our equipment and supplies. If you ask us to use something differently, we cannot be held accountable for any breakages or damages that may occur because we're not trained on those products. So that helps as well too. Offer customers discounts rather, like if you do have a breakage, like a smaller breakage, like say you broke a wine glass, like give them $10 off their next cleaning. Giving discounts on their next service and then replacing it, what that does is it's only costing, basically you're paying for that breakage half price because half of yours is going to go out in labor and the other half isn't. Whatever discount, like oh, it costs $20 to replace it. Well, I'm going to take $20 off your next cleaning. Guess what? That only really costs you $10 in labor versus $20 at Target. So giving discounts on, and now the bigger ones, maybe not so much. Depends. But if you can get away with giving a discount instead of actually paying full price for a breakage, it's much better on you. Last but not least, credit card processing. How in the world do I lower the credit card processing? First of all, you want to monitor your rates and actually get at the effective rate. A lot of credit card companies lie to you. They say it's a certain rate, but when you really look at your effective rate, it's totally different. So making sure that you're monitoring that. And then if you have a volume discount and you've been with that credit card company for 12 months or longer, call them up and say, hey, do you offer any kind of discount? I'm thinking about switching. And a lot of times they will knock down your percentage, especially if you have a high amount of volume. And then if you have to, switch credit card processing because if you're paying over 3.1%, you're paying too much in credit card processing. And then I just talked about monitoring your bills. Sometimes the credit card processor's got some hidden fees in there. Like if you use an Amex, it's like 12%. Make sure you're looking at the bills and seeing what's costing the most. And maybe if you said, well, I don't accept Amex, maybe that would help your credit card fees. Or maybe you didn't realize that they charge for invoicing. And maybe you're like, I want to go on auto pay and I'll just use auto pay instead of sending them an invoice and charging their card. So, and then a lot of times debit cards are a much lower rate. So just looking at your credit card bill and knowing how to analyze it. And then obviously I just talked about auto charging versus invoicing. It does cost money to send invoices out and say they click that invoice and pay with a credit card. Not only have you been charged for the invoice, the 10 cents, then you've also been charged for the credit card processing. Why not just automatically charge their card and not bother with the invoice at all and save yourself time and money? The TCS will do that for you. We auto charge cards. And if the customer wants, they get a receipt through Stripe, but if they want like a invoice, then they can request it afterwards if they need like a more detailed invoice. So also the funnest thing is when you get one of those credit card disputes, don't put it off. Don't do any of that. Figure out how you send confirmation emails. They've accepted your quote. You've sent the customer policies and procedures to that client so many times. You have documented very well. Make sure when you get those disputes that you get back on those disputes and get them submitted quickly. It is not something you can ignore because you will turn around and people are scummy people. And some people just do it, dispute it for no reason, just to see if you're even paying attention. And sometimes companies are like, oh my gosh, I had $3,000 in disputes last month and I didn't even know it. So make sure you're paying attention and fighting those disputes. Are you having fun yet? Okay. So this part is how to create more profit. So if you see here, you've got your revenue is the gray line. Then you've got your orange, which is your COGS. And if you can make your COGS linear and you can predict them and they're going parallel side by side with your revenue. Now your other costs, which we're not going to get into today because that could be a whole another hour, is your management costs or your other fixed costs. Basically all other costs it takes to run your business. That's that flat line. You want to try to get those costs stabilized and flat. And then what happens is when you pass this, here's where all of your profit is. So the higher, So the higher you can get this orange line closer to your, or lower, the higher you can get less space in between that. So like if you can get 40% variable costs, the bigger that profit number is going to grow. And then also it's just, there's no way around it in the cleaning industry. Some industries can do revenue and then they can have their COGS tail off towards the end. Not in the service industry. It's not like that. It's going to be very parallel. So keeping those parallel, the gap as far as part as you can, and then also keeping your other costs as low as you can is going to create that profit margin. Now, I just said a whole lot about cost, and I don't want you to think that cutting cost is the way to make more profit because sometimes cutting costs can hurt you worse. Another way to make this separation, like the separation between here and here bigger, is if you raise your revenue. If you're raising your revenue, that yellow shaded area is going to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger as long as your variable costs are right there linear with it. Or at COGS, I call them variable costs sometimes. So that is, I did put Dan's stuff up here because if you were like, I need help, he is great. Call Dan. If you think it's something you can do on your own, then just start measuring them. If it's something you already have, then I can do a whole other webinar about how now I've stabilized all my costs and then we can make projections for the future and we can try to get we can know if you have the COGS down and you have your costs and you're recording these every month and you've got it stable. Now we can go and predict what we're going to make for the whole next year. But if you're all over the board with your COGS and all over the board with all your other costs, we can't predict for the future. So it's the most important part is getting that COG number consistent. So call Dan if you have no clue where to start. And that is it. Who has questions? Y'all just turn your volume off and ask away?
Good question. You split in their vacuums from cleaning supplies. Did you split them because there's cost of repairs and vacuums? Because you do buy vacuums when you hire people too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Right.
almost like part of your hiring cost is the vacuum on there. But why do you have it as a separate line versus as your not your cleaning supplies cost?
Because it was the majority of the I had to break it down because it was such a big line item. Sorry, I'm moving my desk to sit down. It was such a big line item in the cleaning supplies that I
Hmm.
needed it out to be able to see what substantial difference that the other supplies were. So just being able to monitor it separately so that it's not skewing your overall concept of like what your actual supply costs are. And so I could
That
tell,
makes
oh, when I
sense.
separated it out in vacuums, I was like, oh, okay. So
Hmm.
maybe that switching from one all-purpose cleaner to the other, I could look in the numbers and see exactly without having the vacuum skew my percentages of how much money that would save me. And then you can break it down even further, like broomsticks.
Vacuum bags.
Yeah.
Like who's changing a vacuum bag at every house?
And actually, I do put vacuum bags in the category of vacuums.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm able to see spikes. If you're level, look at your COGS and you're breaking them down and you see them every month, you're like, oh, why did we go up to 5% vacuums? Like, oh,
Hmm.
and then you can kind of figure out the problem is in vacuums or vacuum bags versus not just clumped up supplies.
Right. Yep. That's what we're doing because we're switching from a bag list to bagged. And I'm thinking, okay, how many bags per tech per supply request to put in there? Because
Hmm.
we do track supply requests. We have a form and they know how long this should last. And we went through the
Hmm.
same thing with sponges. Everybody was tossing the sponges and started bringing it in. And I said, there's a whole other side of the sponge you can still use.
Exactly. And
Crazy things.
I would say one thing out of this whole thing is I think a lot of people won't break this down and look at it.
Hmm.
And they're thinking, oh, it's in my COGS. I need to look at cleaning supplies and like totally change the way I'm doing cleaning supplies. But they didn't break it
Hmm.
down per category. And so they just
Right.
spent all this time and effort and money and trying to save 0.5% on their cleaning supplies when really their big problem was in this payroll
Right.
cleaner section. So
Right.
when you break them down, find the one that has the biggest area and solve that problem. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not going to bother with cleaning supplies and breaking mine down because 1.96 isn't bad at all. That's not really a problem.
Right.
Moving on. More important things.
Yep. Yep.
Breakages being at 5% is a heck of a problem. We're going to go to jump on that one, or something like that.
Yeah.
Y'all are awful quiet today. I'm going to call on people now. Let me pull you up. Stop share. Roxy, what was your biggest takeaway? Are you still there? You're muted.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was helping a team.
It's okay. What was your biggest takeaway on COGS? Like, what was y'all's biggest breakthrough with COGS and how to get those lowered, or what was the most helpful thing out of all that?
For us was when we at first struggled with the trainees and getting those costs down because our trainees did have more than 5 days when we first started. And so it really helped out that we were able to manage that better, only give them 5 days. If they worked out, they would stay. If not, we would cut them before the 5 days. And that really helped out.
Cut them.
But
I can't see your pretty face, by the way.
one sec. Here I
There
am.
you are. Okay, I'm gonna call out Caitlin. Are you there? Caitlin was in COG rehab with me for a
I'm
long.
here. Sorry, I was multitasking.
It's okay. What was your biggest thing about COGS for that I was telling everybody we were all three in there together trying to get them fixed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first I just want to say I know this was probably boring to some people, but I actually really liked this webinar. This was my favorite one so far. This was like useful. I think that well, honestly, we didn't always break them down like that. That variable cost or that COG breakdown sheet is what really did it for us. And aside from that, measuring our daily gross profit. So when we had a variable cost problem, we kind of thought it was in payroll cleaners, but then we got even more granular and we broke it down job by job, day by day to figure out and measure the payout on every single job. So
Oh,
that
so
was what helped.
you're saying taking that payroll cleaner and then breaking it down and having a daily gross profit like per
Yeah, like
job.
know what
Like
percentage
how
you paid
much you
out
were
on
charging and
every.
how much you paid out.
Exactly, on every single job, and then average it, obviously. So you know your payout per day.
Yeah.
And then you can create a goal out of that. Figure out where you need to be to lower that. That was the most beneficial in lowering our COGS.
Thank you. And Todd and Pam, are y'all still driving? Do you have anything that helped you guys the most lower your COGS? Or are you still
Well,
lowering COGS?
we're still lowering COGS. It's an ongoing process, but we started with supplies and then we went training, and now we're more payroll focused. And I can tell you, with the changes we've made recently, for last week, we had one person in training, 3 people on JTH, the rest on commissions. And from payroll to gross revenue, used to that would be like somebody in training would be at 50% before payroll taxes. We're at 42% for last week. So it's making it's a small change, but it's a huge impact. So kind of excited to see it play out.
Yay. All right. Well, does anybody else have any other questions? Thank y'all for being my guinea
And
pig.
I do agree with Caitlin. This has been the best one because I'm driving and I'm not even paying attention. I don't even know where I'm at because I love COGS so much. And I didn't know that I did, but I do.
Yeah, it's crazy. I
And
mean,
I will say on our end, like breaking down for the vacuums, breaking that down farther into detail to how many we're actually buying and how long they're lasting and the cost of all of that. And then doing through TCS, the breakage report, because actually I forgot about that. So I need to go back and track. I think we had 2 incidents. We gave one, the customer just said, don't worry about it. And then the other one, we gave him a discount. But we need to go back in and track that.
nice. And I'll post all this because I realized that Friday at 3 o'clock was a really dumb idea to have a webinar. I was like, wait, where is everybody at? And then I'm like, it's 3 o'clock. They're just gonna wait for the recording. Half of them have already opened a beer by now. But all right, y'all. Well, I will see you soon. Thank y'all and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Happy Cog Day.